The logbook. What does it know? It only knows what I write. So it or I say it has been 42 days since the radio died. That's a lie. The sun and the stars stopped agreeing weeks ago. My name is Captain Eldridge, and I am the captain of what is now a ghost ship. It's with great irony that silence, bloody silence, is the loudest thing I've ever heard. It wasn't always this quiet. When we set out, the deck hummed with the voices of Miller, Grant, Reed, and young Sammy. Now there is only the rhythmic slap-slap of the dark deep against the hull. I do my best not to look at the galley. That's where Miller went first. He thought the shadows were stealing our water. So he tried to open the hull with a fire axe to let the ocean in. I had to stop him. For the safety of the ship, I told myself as I buried the knife between his second and third rib. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved to do so. His incessant yapping about Nautical Mary drove me to wit's end. I threw his body over the side and smiled. Then came Grant and Reed, 2 slip notes to a rope. Come to think of it, I should have tied a noose for those 2. They grew convinced I was hiding a GPS in my cabin. They came for me in the dark. In the struggle, the railing gave way. I didn't reach out to catch them. I couldn't risk them pulling me into the abyss. Finally, there was Sammy. Poor starving Sammy. He looked at me with eyes that weren't human anymore. They were the eyes of a wolf looking at a piece of meat. I did what I had to do while he slept, making short work of him, the poor fool. Now I am alone, but the ocean, it's gotten bigger. I've sailed east for 1,000 miles. I should have hit the coast of Portugal or Spain by now. Instead, there is only a horizon that feels like a physical wall. Am I being tortured due to my actions, my just actions? 3 nights ago, the fog rolled in, thicker than the steam of a locomotive. I drifted until a shard of light cut through the haze. A lighthouse. Could it be so? I dropped anchor, the chains screaming in the silent night, and lowered the dinghy. My hands bled as I rowed toward the jagged rocks. The lighthouse was a monolith of ancient stone, its lantern room glowing like a dying star. Smoke curled from the chimney of the attached cabin. Life, I thought. Civilization. After making way along the shore, I pushed open the heavy oak door. The interior was a dream. A roaring fireplace, a pot of savoury stew bubbling in a cast-iron kettle, and a record player scratching out a low, mournful tune. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice cracking from disuse. "Clang, clang, clang!" Heavy boots descended the iron spiral staircase. A door at the back of the room swung open, and a man stepped out. He was in his 60s, with a beard like sea foam, and eyes that seemed to see right through my skin.
"Rough seas, Captain?"
he asked, his voice like grinding gravel. I fell into a chair, shaking, babbling about the lost comms, the storm, and the endless water. I omitted the crew. I omitted the blood on my hands. He watched me with a modest, detached interest, like a scientist observing a drowning insect.
"Sit!"
he said.
"The coffee is fresh."
He sat across from me, the firelight flickering a dance that tended to my aching bones. He began to speak, and his words chilled me more than the Atlantic spray ever could.
"I've sat in this chair for 412 days.
He whispered.
The supply ships stopped coming after the first month. No radio. No birds. Just the light."
"How do you survive?" I asked, clutching the warm mug.
"The ocean provides what is needed,"
he said cryptically. He leaned in, his face hardening.
But I do miss my Oak Haven."
I frowned. Oak Haven? I've navigated these waters for 20 years. I've never heard of it. Is it near England? The States? The keeper tilted his head, looking genuinely puzzled.
"England? The States? Captain, I don't know those places. Are those islands in the Great Void?"
A sweat broke across my brow. The Void? I'm from England. My ship is flagged out of Liverpool. Surely you've heard of the Atlantic Ocean. The keeper didn't blink. He reached out and touched my hand. His skin felt like cold, wet parchment.
"Captain,"
he said softly.
There are no places like those on any map. Tell me, how did you get here? Were not easy to find.
I looked down at my hands. They were stained red, not with blood, but with the glow of the fireplace. Or perhaps they were the same thing.
Where am I?
I whispered. The keeper smiled, showing teeth worn down to the gums.
You're at the end of the world, Cap.
I stood frozen, the coffee mug heavy as lead in my hand. The keeper didn't move. He simply watched me with that same maddening, placid curiosity. Outside, the wind howled. "I am in need of a port, dear sir,"
We are all what the tide makes of us.
he replied, standing slowly. His joints popped like dry kindling. He walked to the record player and lifted the needle.
You say you come from England. You speak of England. You cling to this England. Maybe the maps of that world have forgotten you. Tell me, Eldridge, when you looked at the stars last night, did you recognize a single constellation?
I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died. I thought back to the previous night on the Verity. I had looked up, searching for Polaris, for the bear, for anything to find my way.
Maybe you've slipped beneath this England. This rock is the only solid thing left in this ocean.
He walked to the cast-iron kettle and ladled a bowl of stew, setting it before me. It smelled of barley and bacon and something sweet.
Eat!
He commanded. "I'm leaving," I said, stumbling to my feet. "I have a ship. I have supplies."
You have a coffin made of wood.
He countered, his voice suddenly sharp.
And it is empty, save for the stain. Do you think I don't know why you're really here? The ocean didn't bring you by chance. It brought you because you are the only one left who is heavy enough with sin to anchor this light.
I backed away, my heel catching on the edge of a rug. Beneath the frayed fabric, the floorboards were scarred. Not by age, nor by the settling of the foundation, but by metal. Deep, frantic gouges radiated from the center of the room toward the iron spiral staircase, as if something heavy, or someone desperate, had been dragged across the wood against their will.
Careful!
The keeper rumbled, not moving from his spot by the record player.
The floor is uneven. It has borne the weight of many guests, some heavier than others.
I righted myself, my hand gripping the handle of the knife concealed in my coat pocket. The warmth of the room suddenly felt oppressive, stifling. The smell of the stew shifted. The sweetness wasn't onions or carrots, it was metallic. My stomach turned, violently rejecting the hunger I had felt moments ago. "You said you don't know the States." "You don't know England? But you speak English. You have a record player."
Flotsam!
He said, gesturing vaguely to the clutter of the room.
The sea gives gifts. I learn the words from the books that wash up. I learn the music from the black discs. I mimic the sounds, Captain. That is all.
He turned his back to me to stir the pot again. It was a tactical error, or a lure. I took a silent step toward him. "You have electricity." "That lamp, it's not oil,"
A generator.
he murmured, the spoons scraping the iron.
Old diesel. Found in a wreck on the shoals 3 years back. I ration it.
"A wreck," I repeated. "What ship?" The keeper stopped stirring.
The name was scraped off, but the men inside, they looked much like you. Hollowed out.
My eyes darted around the room, finally landing on a shelf cluttered with nautical debris. A rusted sextant, a handful of silver coins, a heavy woolen coat that looked moth-eaten, and there, sitting innocuously between a jar of sea glass and a whalebone scrimshaw, was a lighter. It was silver, engraved with a compass rose. My breath hitched. I had given a lighter just like that to Miller for his birthday. I had watched him flick it open 1,000 times on the deck of the Verity. "Where did you get that?" I demanded, pointing a shaking finger. The keeper didn't look.
The lighter. Found it in the belly of a shark I gutted on the rocks below. A week ago. Maybe 2.
"Liar!" I shouted, the knife clearing my pocket. "Miller, the man who owned that. I put him in the water 40 days ago. 1,000 miles west of here." The keeper turned slowly. He looked at the knife, then up to my eyes. He didn't flinch. He looked disappointed.
Distance is a trick of the light, Captain. And time is just the tide coming in and going out. You say 40 days. I say the shark ate well recently. Perhaps you are not the navigator you think you are.
He walked past me, ignoring the blade, and sat back in his chair. He picked up his mug.
You think you sailed a straight line, Eldridge, but a man with a broken compass and a broken mind circles. You've been circling this rock for weeks. I've watched your mast dip in and out of the fog since the last new moon.
I haven't, I stammered, though the room began to tilt. I've been sailing east.
Have you?
He took a sip.
Or have you been drifting where the current takes you while you sleep? While you cleaned your ship?
He gestured to the window, to the blackness outside.
There is no Oakhaven. I made that up. I wanted to see if you were lucid enough to catch the lie. You weren't! You accepted a nonsensical place because you have forgotten what the real world looks like.
He leaned forward.
There is no port nearby, Captain. No England. Not because they don't exist, but because you cannot reach them. The fuel in your ship is gone, isn't it? That's why the engine died. That's why you rowed.
I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles white. I have fuel.
Check your boots,
he whispered.
You've been leaking for days. I could smell you the moment you stepped inside. You're empty, Captain.
I looked down. The leather was stained dark, soaked through. Not with water, with diesel.
You're stranded, just like me.
I am not like you. I am a captain, I hissed.
Then command your vessel,
the keeper said.
Go back to your dinghy. Row back to your ghost ship. Sit in the dark with what was his name? Sammy? Sit with Sammy and wait for the sun to correct itself. Or you can pay the toll.
He challenged softly.
The light up top. The rotation gear is heavy.
He pointed a calloused finger at the spiral staircase behind him.
My back is broken. I need a man strong enough to turn the crank until the mechanism is fixed.
I lowered the knife slightly. And if I stay?
I told you, Captain. The ocean provides. Tonight it provided you.
The keeper smiled, and for the first time, I saw the malice I had expected earlier. It wasn't supernatural. It was the cruelty of a man who had survived by making hard choices.
The guest quarters are in the cellar.
He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy iron key, placing it on the table. I looked at the key. I looked at the rug with the scratch marks. I looked at the lighter on the shelf. And if I refuse?
You work, you eat. You don't work, you leave,
he said, turning back to his stew.
Then you can try your luck with the fog. But the tide is rising, and I believe I hear your dinghy scraping against the rocks. Beneath the rug. Lock yourself in for the night. I don't sleep with armed strangers in my cabin.
I spun toward the door, listening. Silence. Just the wind. But then, faint. Impossible to locate a voice. It sounded like Miller. I froze. The keeper didn't react. He just took another bite of stew.
Sounded like wood splintering, actually. The wind plays tricks in the chimney. Best close the door, Eldridge, before the draft lets everything else in.
The keeper said, not looking up. I looked at the heavy oak door, then back at the trap door beneath the rug. The scratch marks led down, I realized.
Not up.
Who is down there? I whispered.
No one, not anymore,
he said. As I began my descent into the cellar, the darkness rose up to meet me, cold and suffocating. Each creak of the wooden stairs under my boots sounded like a bone snapping. And with every step down, my mind drifted further back. Back before the verity. Before the title of captain. Before the blood that I could scrub from my hands but never scour from my soul. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesdays were for fresh bread. It had been exactly 1 year since the earth took my parents. And on that day, the fire took the rest. I had just finished a 3-week stint on a rusted trawler, the smell of gut and brine distinct on my coat. My duffel bag dug into my shoulder, but the weight felt light because I was walking toward them. My modest home, my anchor. I turned the final corner, rehearsing the joke I would tell my wife, imagining the squeal of my little girl. But there was no squeal. There was only the silence of the grave, broken by the low murmur of men who bring bad news. A constable and an inspector stood by the gate. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at the ground, shifting their weight like men who wished they were anywhere else. They had been waiting for me. The moments that followed weren't linear. They were shards of glass, jagged and unconnected. The officers' mouths moved, but the sound was underwater. They used soft words to describe a hard hell. Electrical, sudden, smoke inhalation, peaceful. They dared to use that word. They didn't suffer, son, the inspector had said, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. They were asleep when the roof came down. I shoved past him, my bag hitting the pavement with a thud. I ran toward what should have been my front door, but my knees gave out before I could reach the threshold. There was no door. There was only a blackened, skeletal frame against the grey sky. My life, my love, my sweet laughing girl, reduced to wet ash and the smell of charred timber. I collapsed into the mud, screaming at a god who had clearly looked away. I clawed at the dirt until my fingernails broke, trying to dig them out, trying to reverse time. Everything I was died in that wreckage. The man who stood up from the mud wasn't a husband or a father. He was a husk. I turned my back on the ruins. I turned my back on the land. I walked to the harbour and didn't stop until the water was deep enough to drown out the memory of the fire. The sea was cruel, yes, but the sea was water, and water couldn't burn. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The air down here was different, colder, thick with the smell of wet limestone, and something sharper, like lye. I reached out into the void, my fingers brushing against a cold brass chain hanging from the low ceiling. With a sharp tug, a single naked bulb flickered to light. The light was harsh, yellow, and swinging slightly from my touch. This wasn't just a cellar, it was a storehouse of lives. Stacks of crates lined the far wall, their wood bleached white by salt. I stepped closer, the floorboards beneath the rug upstairs groaning in response to the keeper's movements above. I reached for the nearest box and wiped away a layer of grime. My blood turned to ice. Carved into the lid was a name, Miller. I stumbled back, my heel catching on a loose stone. I tore open the crate. Inside were Miller's things. Not just the lighter I'd seen upstairs, but his heavy wool sweaters, his tobacco pouch, and a small framed photograph of his mother that he'd kept tucked under his mattress on the Verity. I moved to the next crate, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the wood. Grant. Inside lay his boots, still caked with the dried salt of the Atlantic. Reed, his harmonica, the one he played every evening at sunset, sat atop a pile of his discarded letters. "No," I whispered, the sound lost in the damp stone. "This isn't possible." I had killed them. I had watched them fall. I had thrown Miller's body into the churning wake of the ship. How were their belongings here, neatly packed and labelled, in a lighthouse in a great void that didn't exist on any map? Then I saw it. A small wooden trunk tucked into the darkest corner of the cellar, partially hidden behind a support beam. It wasn't like the others. It was charred. The edges were blackened, the wood flaky and smelling of ancient cold smoke. I knelt before it, the harsh light of the swinging bulb glinting off something caught in the grain of the wood. A ring, a white gold band with diamonds half melted into the lid. My breath left me in a ragged sob. I knew that ring. I pried the lid open. There were no clothes inside. No nautical instruments. Inside the charred trunk was a pile of children's shoes, perfectly preserved, and a single soot-stained ribbon that had once been bright yellow. And beneath them a stack of logbooks. I grabbed the one on top. The ink was fresh, the handwriting precise. Day 412 the entry began. The captain arrived tonight. He smells of diesel and old fire. He thinks he is the one who survives. They always do. I've prepared the stew. I've put Miller's lighter on the shelf. Let's see if he remembers the heat. The floorboards above me stopped creaking. The silence returned, louder than ever. "Eldridge?" The keeper's voice didn't come from the kitchen. It came from the top of the cellar stairs, right behind me. "Did you find what you were looking for? Or did you just find more of what you've been trying to drown?" I slowly turned, the yellow ribbon clutched in my fist. He was standing in the shadows of the doorway, his silhouette blocking the only exit. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need to. "How are my men's things here?" The keeper stepped onto the first stair, his face half lit by the swinging bulb.
Captain, there are facts harder than this stone floor. Facts you sailed into the abyss to escape. Your crew, they didn't die from mutiny. You killed them because of what they found. They uncovered the truth you've been running from since Liverpool. They learned that you, Eldridge, it was you. You struck the match. You started the fire that turned your family to ash. You killed your men not to save the ship, but to bury that secret. And now, at the frayed edge of the world, the running stops. You must choose. Do you take my place? Do you become the keeper of this monolith, shackled to the rock to maintain the light? Or do you return to your vessel, your hollow ghost ship, and sail the void forever, searching for a port that burned to the ground years ago?
The keeper who had moments ago been at the top of the cellar stairs was gone. Had he ever truly stood there? Or was he just another phantom born of the smoke in my mind? It didn't matter. The iron crank was cold in my hands, and the duty was clear. I suppose we are all sailing away from something? But when the truth is so vile, so unbearable, we don't just run from it, we drown it. We rewrite the logbook, page by agonizing page, inventing a storm to explain the wreckage, hoping to live with ourselves after we've burned our own world to the waterline. I deserve this. I deserve to be anchored to this lonely rock, guiding the other lost souls through the fog for eternity. For the most terrible lies aren't the ones we tell the world. They are the ones we tell ourselves, just to keep breathing.
A portrait of a man named Eldridge, a navigator of the high seas who spent a lifetime charting courses to avoid a single specific destination. The truth. He believed that if he sailed far enough and fast enough, he could outrun the smoke of a memory that burned brighter than any sun. Captain Eldridge found out the hard way that you cannot drown a conscience, no matter how deep the water, and that the heaviest cargo a ship can carry is a lie told to oneself. He sought a port that didn't exist, only to find that he was the anchor all along. He has taken his post now, a permanent resident on a rock at the edge of eternity, a keeper of the light for those who are lost, and the prisoner of the dark for the one man who can never be found. Captain Eldridge has finally docked his ghost ship at a keep that never was.